See, we know this place they call freedom. Know it was discovered in the moment that beings named themselves human, groped up from all fours, fashioned growing things into ropes, roped the necks of the beings they used to run next to, and named them animal. Shamed them into other, while they hovered above them with sticks that used to be trees, and stones that used to hold up their heads while they were sleeping. If this is freedom, then I want to be dreaming so that waking up is an option. Because this place they call freedom is not just a place, it's an auction where a handshake has always sealed the fate of the being bargained for. Each stat has been birthed by the fat of a hand handing out judgment, a hand whose lifeline can be traced back to fingers who fingered the cat of nine tails that trailed the backs of indentured servants, then shrugged off their arms' tiredness to undress and skin the backs of those they turned into slaves.
So I grew up in a small town in Ohio that was predominantly European American, really rural Ohio, coal mining and farms basically. But my grandmother was a librarian. And I remember, I either was outside all the time or in the library all the time. There was this great chair that I loved, and I remember going and just curling up in that chair with a book, right? But at the same time, there were very few writers that I saw myself in fully. So for example, I would read Judy Blume like almost every other girl at the time, even though I was a big tomboy, but I would also read Judy Blume and try to find these ways of connecting as a girl, right? But I couldn't connect as a black girl. I couldn't connect my race to my readings so much, except for one book that I had that was a collection of poetry that my great-grandmother gave me. So I remember when I went to college and connecting for the first time with people like Zora Neale Hurston and people like James Baldwin, who I'm still continually connecting with. And what they did, they helped me know that I was okay, that whatever I was feeling, whoever I was, that one, as a black person, I belonged in this world and in this country. As a woman, I belonged in this world and in this country. My gender identity, my sexuality, all of those things, all of those writers showed me that I belonged and that I was okay, and in some cases better than okay, being who I am. And so for me, that's why I write and that's why I read. And so each of those writers, Sandra Cisneros, each of those writers gave me a little bit of a piece of myself. And so like if I think about myself as a puzzle, a puzzle, and I sort of cut out those pieces. I don't know what the shapes would be, but if I saw myself as a puzzle before with all the pieces not quite connected, each of those writers would be, when I read that person, okay, I could pick up this piece and put it here, or I could pick up this piece and put it here, or I could pick up this piece and put it here. They really helped me to piece together my identity in ways that made me whole.
Being able to open up your literature book or walk into an English class or an after-school program and hear about more than just Robert Frost is really important because one, love Robert Frost, he's great, but every student has already read that. Every student has been exposed to him. Every student has read some of these dead white guys and dead white women that end up in these books. And I think students deserve something new. They deserve a fresh curriculum, and they deserve a curriculum that represents them. But more than that, they deserve a curriculum that goes beyond the representation of themselves.
It is so important to give kids a diversity of literature. So much of what is in the curriculum is coming from the same kind of voices. For instance, the British literature curriculum in Kalamazoo Public Schools focuses almost exclusively on, dead white male authors. There is some diversity, but only in the second portion of the class, and it's also, their linking texts, they're optional. They shouldn't be optional. Students should have exposure to more than just, the key African American or Latino writers. It shouldn't just be that they can only name Martin Luther King Jr. They should be able to name multiple people, especially considering the diversity of our community. The diversity of our literature should reflect that.
a lot of them were very, you know, they have people like Martin Luther King, who is, you know, one that they think of whenever like social justice comes up, or you know, inequality. They kind of automatically, that's their go-to. But not really. There wasn't, other than that name coming up, not really.
Once I got kind of familiar with the program goals, I was really excited to see that it would allow me to become more familiar with authors who aren't necessarily always part of our curriculum. I learned a lot from the other teachers and professors and everyone who was working with the project. And it has definitely helped me then integrate some of that into my classroom just outside of the project goals.
And one begins to suspect an awful thing, that people believe, that they deserve their history. You know, it made me think about, I was watching this documentary, and there was this little girl, and they had set two dolls in front of her, and one was black and one was white, and they said, which one's the good doll? She chooses the white doll. And she said the black doll was bad, and she chose the little white doll. And she was like, well, they asked her, why did you choose the white doll? And she says, well, because always in the movies, the white girl or white boy is the good person, and the black doll is the bad person. So thinking about that, as I read that, I was like, oh wow, some people actually really do, you know, feel like they deserve their history.
Mm-hmm. We tend to think it doesn't impact us, we don't need it, therefore I'm above that, or it's not worth my time. So just trying to get people to, you know, drop some of maybe their guard in terms of what they will consider worthy of their, you know, attention, of their education.
Being able to see someone else's poem is really different than being able to look up facts about that person, because the poem has their voice. The poem embodies their experience and embodies those emotions that they go through. So you really get a chance to see people who you may not be able to touch, who you may not be able to meet. It's especially important right now because there are so many writers out there, and with there being so many, it's really easy for writers of color to get lost in that mix and to never end up in a student's hand. So to be able to come to a student and say, hey, I have this poem here by Alice Walker, I have this poem here by Pamela Sneed, and this poem is about you in some kind of way. And if you read it, you might understand something within yourself.
Any option for, you know, being able to expand one's sense of social consciousness and expand their feelings towards other groups, or even the historical context, and maybe piecing it together a little better, it is never a bad thing in my opinion, and should be a part of the curriculum. It really should be, but